In a quiet neighborhood, a routine stop turns into a shocking display of abuse when a police officer targets a black girl, tasering her in front of her father. What should have been a simple interaction spirals out of control as the father, who is an FBI agent, stands helpless, unaware of the cop's racist intentions. This chilling encounter begs the question: how could a trained officer not recognize the man in front of him? And why did this officer act with such aggression? Watch as the story unfolds, with tension building and lives changed forever. In this video, we dive into what happens when an innocent moment becomes a nightmare, and what happens when those who should protect us become the ones we need protection from. Stay tuned to discover the twists that no one saw coming. As the officer demands identification, the girl, visibly shaken, reaches for her bag, trying to stay calm under the pressure. But before she can explain, the officer's hand moves to his taser. The father, a seasoned FBI agent, stands frozen, his instincts screaming that something isn't right. He watches, powerless, as the officer fires, sending his daughter to the ground in agony. What the officer doesn't know is that the man he's confronting is no ordinary civilian. The FBI agent's badge is tucked away in his jacket pocket, but it's clear that he wasn't given a chance to de-escalate the situation. The tension in the air is thick. The officer doesn't just have his badge to worry about now. He's also made a dangerous misstep in front of the one person who could unravel everything. But what happens next will leave you questioning how far the abuse of power can go. As the taser's electric crack fades, the father rushes to his daughter's side, kneeling beside her as she gasps for breath, still shaking from the shock. His mind races, torn between duty and fear. He reaches for his badge, but the officer's hand is already on his radio, calling for backup. The father's heart sinks. He can't show his badge now. It might only make things worse. For a moment, he considers his options. Should he identify himself and risk further escalation, or should he play along and try to de-escalate as best as he can? The officer stands over them, eyes narrowed in suspicion as a crowd begins to gather. Whispers of confusion and anger spread through the onlookers. Some start filming, while others exchange knowing looks. The father's mind snaps back to the present. This isn't just a random case of mistaken identity. This is something deeper, something that's happening far too often. He knows that if he doesn't act quickly, the officer's ignorance could spark a dangerous situation, one that could have lasting consequences for his daughter and for him. Meanwhile, in the crowd, a young woman with a history of police brutality in her family watches intently. She knows what comes next, but she isn't sure she can trust the father to handle it. The way the officer is posturing, the way the bystanders are already pulling out their phones, this could escalate into something more than anyone is prepared for. The girl's body is still trembling on the pavement, but the true fight might just be beginning. The officer's eyes flicker between the father and daughter, his grip tight on the taser, still unsure of what to do next. The father holds his daughter close, whispering words of comfort that he hopes will calm her, but inside, his heart is pounding. Every instinct tells him he should act, he should show his badge, take control of the situation. But something in the officer's stance tells him that it might be too late. The crowd is growing, and the tension is palpable. A low murmur ripples through the onlookers. Phones are raised, recording everything, their lenses capturing every moment, every word. The officer's nervous energy is contagious. He doesn't want to make a mistake, but he's already made one. From the back of the crowd, a voice cuts through the growing noise. "Hey, you're a cop, right? Who the hell are you to do that to a kid?" The officer glances over, his jaw tightening. The father recognizes the voice. It's the woman he had seen earlier, the one filming from the corner. She's not just an observer, she's someone who's been through this, someone who knows what happens when justice goes unserved. The father's pulse quickens. The last thing he needs is someone escalating the situation further, but there's something about her presence, her anger, that makes him wonder if she sees something he doesn't. The officer shifts uncomfortably, and the father's eyes narrow, reading the signs. There's something in the air, something that feels like the calm before a storm. He knows that if he doesn't step in now, this situation could spiral into chaos. His daughter's life is at stake, and no matter what happens, he can't let that happen again. Everyone turns, and there she stands, the woman from the crowd, the one filming earlier. She steps forward, holding up her phone, and a cold chill runs down the father's spine. The video playing on her screen is clear. The officer had tasered his daughter not out of fear, but in cold blood. And then, to everyone's shock, the footage shows something the father had never seen coming. The same backup officers from the elite unit casually walking past the scene earlier, their faces clearly visible as they looked on, unaware that they were being filmed. The father's breath catches in his throat. He knew something didn't add up, but this is worse than he imagined. The woman's voice rings out again, louder now. "You've been set up. This wasn't just a mistake. This is bigger than you know." The crowd murmurs, some still unsure whether to believe her, but the undeniable evidence in her video leaves them no room to doubt. The father's mind reels as he tries to process what's happening. It wasn't just one rogue officer. There was a deliberate attempt to push him into a corner, to escalate things and tarnish his reputation. His daughter's assault was never about a simple misunderstanding. It was a calculated move, and the backup officers, they had been part of the plan all along. Before he can react, the sirens wail again, louder this time. The real authorities, the ones who might know the full story, are finally arriving. But the woman's revelation has already thrown everything into disarray. As the backup officers exchange tense looks, one of them whispers something into his radio, too quiet for anyone to hear. And then, just as quickly as they arrived, the backup officers turn, disappearing into the crowd before anyone can stop them. The father is left standing there, his daughter in his arms, with more questions than answers. The crowd's whispers grow louder, the video already being shared across social media, but the feeling of being watched, the sense that something much larger than him is at play, lingers in the air. For a moment, everything goes still. The sirens continue to blare in the background. The father knows this is far from over. The truth has been set loose, but now it's a race against time to uncover the full story before those behind this orchestrated nightmare come for him next. In the days that followed, the video of the incident spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up, and soon the truth began to unravel. The father's identity was confirmed, and the officers who had escalated the situation were put under investigation. The backup officers, part of a covert unit with a history of questionable actions, were now facing serious consequences for their role in the orchestrated attack. The father, shaken but resolute, made sure his daughter received the medical care she needed, both physically and emotionally. They had been through hell, but together they were stronger. The woman in the crowd, whose video had exposed the plot, became a key witness. Her courage in stepping forward changed everything, inspiring others to speak out against corruption and abuse of power. The family moved forward, knowing that the fight wasn't over, but hopeful that this victory would bring some measure of justice, and that, in the end, truth always has a way of coming to light. A new siren wails in the distance. Backup is coming. But it's not just the officer's backup that worries the father, it's the crowd. How many of them are filming? How many of them are prepared to tell their version of what happened? And in a moment of clarity, he realizes this isn't just a fight for his daughter's safety anymore. It's a fight for the truth. As the sirens grow louder, the officer's stance grows more rigid. His hand hovers over his taser, but his eyes dart nervously to the approaching crowd. He's aware of the growing danger, his every move being captured, every word scrutinized. The father takes a deep breath, willing himself to stay calm. He knows he needs to keep the situation from boiling over. But just as he's about to speak, something unexpected happens. A second police car pulls up to the scene, its lights flashing in rhythm with the first. The officer's backup, he thinks. But as the door swings open, a chilling realization sets in. The new arrivals aren't just any officers. They're from an elite unit. He recognizes their uniforms. They don't belong here. These are the officers that have been involved in high-profile cases, the kind that make headlines for all the wrong reasons. They're not here to help. They're here to escalate. The father's gut tightens. He knows the officer who tasered his daughter is in over his head, but what he didn't expect was this level of backup. The woman in the crowd sees it too. Her eyes widen, and she pulls her phone down, her finger hovering over the record button, unsure whether to film or intervene. The crowd, sensing the shift, grows uneasy. Some are whispering, others are frozen, unsure of what to do next.